I teach at Irvine High School history classes. I have wonderful students, but this year I teach primarily AP World and AP US History, which is sophomores and juniors.
Hello, my name is Chloe. I'm a junior at Irvine High School.
Hello, my name is Emily Zhao, and I'm also a junior at Irvine High School.
My name is Brandon Kim, and I'm also a junior at Irvine High.
Last year, it was 100 years since the work of Alice Piper. And I realized most of my students didn't have a lot of Native American history, and most of my students and peers had never heard of Alice Piper. And I always try to bring in more regional history, California history. I know that they get it in elementary school, but I thought she was a perfect example of someone who is a student who can do more and chooses to. She is someone who overcame incredible challenges and adversity, and her advocacy helped others in the future in tremendous ways, very much like Mendez, very much like Brown, but they don't know the name Piper. And so since it was 100 years and more people were bringing up her name, I saw her in some periodicals, and I thought this would be a perfect example of how they can be inspired to do great work like that in the future.
My first reaction when I learned about Alice Piper was both excitement and also confusion. I was really excited when I first researched about Alice Piper to see this 15-year-old girl around my age fighting for her rights to an equal education. But as I was researching her, I also felt really confused. My main question was always, why did I not learn about her earlier? I thought that she had a very similar motivation to the Brown versus Board of Education and the Mendez v. Westminster, which I learned in my history textbooks, but those seemed to be spotlighted, and for some reason her story was sidelined, and I was very confused as to why that was.
So Alice Piper is a name that I heard being tossed around here and there back in middle school and in elementary school. So when I saw it and we were trying to decide a project topic, I was like, oh look, it's Alice Piper. I recognize it, and I kind of knew her background. I knew that she was this amazing person, just 15, going all the way to, change the world. So when I talked about them, they were like, who? So I was like, you don't know her? And I explained to them, and they're like, wow, that's so inspirational. So that's how we chose the topic. But yeah, originally I thought she was so inspirational. And then when we started researching about her, there wasn't much about her at all, I thought she was a very well-known case since I had heard her around, and there wasn't much, and I was like, well, her story is so exciting, we should really try to dig into it, try to learn more, try to spread it around.
My first reaction when I heard about the Alice Piper court case, I was pretty inspired. I think it's not common for a young girl to make an impact in the California state education law, and I think that most times Native Americans' history is often highlighted on how they're mistreated and how they face inequity in the United States, but I think it was refreshing to see how they stood up and how they were able to make a statement in the society?
Well, Brandon and Chloe and Emily did 99% of the work. I think my role as a teacher and having taught for National History Day about 20 years is to make sure they stay the course and do the more difficult research to create a project that is truly unique. And many people have done great research on Alice Piper, but the way they were able to present it through an exhibit with symbolism, with questions that still need to be answered too, to keep the hunt going, I thought they went above and beyond, and my responsibility was to just keep asking those questions of them.
What's motivating for me to continue this project is once we started, it was just a history project, but once we got more into it, we realized how much this means to like not only our state but like our entire country.
With National History Day, the students are supposed to go above and beyond in their research. And sometimes they're doing work that's so advanced, it's not just college level, it's graduate school level. And often they need access to scholarly journals, things that they wouldn't typically have in high school. They have the internet, but I don't want it to be limited to that. Fortunately, I had a friend in the area where Alice Piper went to school. My friend was at Bishop High, and we thought maybe we can make connections through her. And that didn't actually work out. Emily went directly to the teachers at the school through email. And I think that motivation is my primary responsibility as an educator. I can guide them in the learning process. Sometimes I can hook them with a fun fact, but they need to pursue more of the learning on their own. This was a challenging process, though. There are gaps in the research, so we still want to help fill those, and Emily and Chloe and Brandon are still working on that.
When it came to theme, something we understood is that through this project, we'd be representing someone, we'd be representing a community. So we thought to ourselves, who do we want to represent, right? I asked a bunch of people. I asked my history teacher, I asked I know some people who majored in history in college, asked them what their opinions were, who they thought was like someone very inspirational, who they thought needed this representation. And one of my teachers, they said, not going to this school is like separate. He told me that Native Americans could always use more representation. That was kind of confusing to me. You know, elementary school, they're always explaining about Native American way of life. But aside from that, we don't really know these figures, what happened to them after their the assimilation into American society, after the Dawes Act. There's not much on that. So based on that, we had a few options already open.
I feel they understood the court case and they could get enough access to that specific information. What was particularly challenging about the research was it seemed to end soon after. So we have this incredible success story about integration of schools and access to schools. And in teaching many teenage girls, I always appreciate when they're feisty. And with Alice Piper responding to legislation that was so limiting, so to lose access to land and rights and opportunities during the Coolidge administration, to be able to fight back and use this as an opportunity to attend school. And having supportive parents was great, but not having really the opportunities that the rest of us have. That disenfranchisement is so frustrating. I think the students appreciated her struggle and wanted to know what happened next. Like, that was the hardest part for all of us. So when we looked ahead, we found that she had been teaching at some schools in Nevada, Christian boys' schools in Nevada, and we didn't find much in between. So for a lot of the students, when we were relating the story, they said, well, what happened in between? So we see this as a great success. She helped so many other people. But what was her life like in between those two stages? So I would still like to know, but I don't know where you get that information. So I would say that was our biggest challenge, trying to find that.
So Brandon and I first narrowed down this project mainly because we are both student journalists. We knew that as student journalists, we wanted to do a topic related to student rights. And this really narrowed down the topics that we wanted to choose for the project. But like what Chloe said earlier, what really made Alice Piper stand out was the fact that we don't see a lot of Native American representation in a lot of these projects, and also we don't really hear a lot of these Native American stories in our textbooks too. So that's why we felt we wanted to kind of showcase her story through our project. And as for how we chose the message we conveyed in our board, we mainly focused on Alice Piper's court case. So we really wanted to showcase and focus on Alice Piper's court case in our project, and that really helped us structure our board. We knew that we wanted to focus on how she argued for a fair education, but we also wanted to show her impact and legacy from the court case, and this helped us develop sections and categories of our board. For example, the rights and responsibilities. The rights where we focused on how she used the Dawes Act and the 14th Amendment to win, and the responsibilities where we showed how she held powers accountable through her court case.
I feel that when we cover more of the 20th century Native American experience, the students are enlightened. It's like they have never learned about it before. So the American Indian movement, the occupation of Alcatraz, sometimes that's all you have in the textbook, and they wonder, well, what's the rest of the story? I believe it was Marie Wilcox, who was one of the last people to be speaking her native language, was in Visalia. These people from California who are still around and can speak to the experience, if we can capture their stories either in student projects or in interviews that we archive and use in our curriculum, that would be fantastic. I do like to cover geography with maps of Native American tribal land too, so we're not just coming into a class and learning, which states are where. I think it's important to understand who lived on the land and how they still do today, that it's not gone. And the Autry Museum is a great place for students to visit. We can't all just take field trips there. I was just there with my dad recently, and he said, oh, do you teach this in school? Because he had never learned that history, specifically of Native Americans in California. I said, we do more of it now. We didn't used to do it as well before, but I think we could do better, but we certainly do more of it now. It should be a huge part of ethnic studies for the Native American curriculum. I think we could use a lot from the Autry Museum.
I drew a bunch of sketches, little doodles here and there, and I showed it to him. I made a few posters like this before. I have a lot of experience. I understand what aspects need to be accounted for when making this, but I also wanted to try something different, something new, something I did not have the skills for. So I asked Brandon, and he was like, okay, I have a few ideas on how to structure this. So while I mainly worked on kind of cutting out the writing, gluing it together, building the structure of the board, just the base, he worked on the finer details. The exhibit, if you look in our exhibit, there's a classroom that's like kind of attached to the wall, and another one with a bunch of like celebrations of how education is now available. That part was all him.
Initially, I was assigned to like work on the more technical side of the project, like putting the board, making the roof, and if you look at our board, there's also like it's interactive. So if you make this little Native Indian girl like move, she makes the poster. Like she has a sign up that says about Native American rights. So I made that through like just clippings and also 3D printing of technology. So I think the hardest part was just like cutting it accurately, just carving out all the details like in a way that it's presentable. And another thing that I did with Emily is that she reached out to a lot of Native American students, and we were able to get their perspective on the project, or like their perspective on the issue, which was, I think, very beneficial for our project, since we were able to get like firsthand. Most difficult for me, honestly, is just making our title page on the top. I used the toothpicks to make it really stable, but it was pretty hard to make it not fall off. I had to like find out ways how to make it stick. I eventually ended up using like a glue gun to make the toothpick more stable, and then which is what makes the letters like stand out and look more 3D.
For me, the most difficult part of this project was finding the information about Alice Piper. In this group, I mainly took on the role of researching for our project. And when I first started researching on Alice Piper, I realized that since her story and court case aren't really well known, it's not very well documented either online. And a lot of the websites that I found for our project repeated the same information or just summarized the same points. For example, they would talk about who Alice Piper was, the fact that she won her case, and maybe she influenced Brown versus Board of Education, or the fact that June 2nd is Alice Piper Day. But when we wanted to do deeper analysis or like find the little details about Alice Piper, it was very difficult to do.
So I lived in California since I was 4. They focused a lot on spreading like California history, right? Native American history was up there. We had a bunch of Native American projects in like elementary school, but you know, elementary school projects are go outside and try to replicate the Native American way of life, which basically to us was just find feathers and tie them together into a necklace or something. Then, my first actual research on Native American life was somewhere between middle school. It was on, like I said again, the Native American way of life. And it was, you know, didn't really cross my mind. In middle school years, you just want to get it over with. School is not that deep. Now that I'm older, more mature, I look back into it and I'm like, maybe I should have paid attention a bit more, because when you're making the Alice Piper Heart, when we were making it, there's not much about her per se, so you have to compensate with knowing more about her people, more about her history, the Native American way of life. My prior knowledge really was put to the test with this project. It was greatly applied, and I think it was the foundation, the basis for how I viewed this project. Like, oh, because this was how they were treated, this was their way of life.
And I know that at the exhibition when we showed off our display, our board was literally like a center, like it was like attracting everyone. People kept on taking pictures, they were looking at our board. I guess our story of Alice Piper was able to attract other people mainly because of his contributions too.
I think Alice Piper is someone everyone can relate to, but also everyone can be inspired by. She was 15 when she did this, and it makes me feel like I need to do so much more. But I think for a 15-year-old, it makes them feel like they can do incredible things. And I think students often wonder if they want to be teachers. And to know that she did this great work at 15 and went on to be a teacher, I think that's encouraging to them. I want to make sure that students know a lot about California. And there's so many different ways that you can appreciate our state. And if she's missing from our curriculum, I think we're missing a big part of California history.